Oscar Piastri wins! Oscar Piastri wins! Oscar Piastri wins!
Every once in a while, a driver comes along who just gets it. A driver with a natural talent so obvious, you know they're a future world champion in the making. That's Oscar Piastri, Formula One's newest race winner. Oscar Piastri's journey to Formula One was nothing short of brilliant. He was a driver who could adapt and win immediately, earning a promotion to the next level every single year. It was a flawless ascent that built massive expectations for the kid born in Melbourne on April 6th, 2001. To put that in perspective, when he was born, drivers like Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, Fernando Alonso, and Juan Pablo Montoya were already on the F1 grid. Contrast that with Alonso, who was born when legends like Nelson Piquet, Carlos Reutemann, Alain Prost, and Gilles Villeneuve were racing. Speaking of Villeneuve, that's a name with a connection to Oscar, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Oscar Piastri comes from a well-off family. His father, Chris Piastri, is the director of HP Tuners, a company specializing in vehicle diagnostics and software. It was his father who would finance his career, which, like Lewis Hamilton's, began with remote-controlled cars, where Oscar won his first titles. Piastri was passionate about racing, and at age 10, he started karting with his father's full support. While his karting career wasn't exhaustive, he quickly found success in Australian national championships, winning his first title in 2013 and turning professional in 2014. The kid was clearly a gem. He became a state and national champion in Australia, but 2016 was the pivotal year. Like Mark Webber and Daniel Ricciardo before him, he knew that to make it to F1, he had to conquer Europe. So Oscar moved to England to pursue his dream. At the end of the season, Oscar finished 6th in the CIK World Championships in Bahrain, ahead of future F3 champion Victor Martins and Theo Pourchaire. Behind him were names like Dennis Hauger and his fellow countryman Jack Doohan. After 5 years in karts, he had proven he was ready for single-seaters. That transition happened in the 2016-17 offseason in the F4 UAE Championship. It was a bit of a tough start. He only competed in 3 of the 5 race weekends, but still managed 2 third-place finishes. But that wasn't the championship he'd be judged on. The British F4 regular season, however, was a different story. Racing for the Ardent team, Oscar started well with 2 podiums at Brands Hatch, but the early part of the season was dominated by Jamie Caroline, with Oscar battling for the top 5 against a certain Logan Sargent. The breakthrough came at Oulton Park, where Piastri took his first ever win in a single-seater. As it often does, that first victory unlocked something. Piastri was immediately more competitive, racking up 4 more podiums, including wins at Snetterton, Knockhill, and Silverstone. He climbed to 2nd in the standings and finished as the vice-champion, all with an attitude that made it seem completely normal. At the end of the year, Piastri got a taste of what was next, the Formula Renault Euro Cup. In 2018, he dove into the championship full-time. The grid was stacked with talent like Christian Lundgaard, Victor Martins, and of course his old rival, Logan Sargent. But for the first time, Piastri's season was a mixed bag. The Australian struggled, only scoring 3 podiums in the second half of the year and finishing 8th overall. However, he was well ahead of his teammates, suggesting that maybe Arden didn't have the pace to compete at the front. In a young driver's career, one off-season isn't a disaster as long as you bounce back quickly. Oscar was still seen as a huge prospect, and the fact that Christian Horner, co-founder of Arden, was paying attention was reassuring. But Red Bull wouldn't be the only top team interested in the Aussie gem. In 2019, he moved to the reigning champion French team R-Ace GP. Piastri leveled up, finally winning in Formula Renault at Silverstone, where he dominated both races. From that point on, Oscar demonstrated a crucial skill: consistency. With the exception of one 6th place finish, he was always in the top 5. He won again at Spa, the Nürburgring, and the Hungary. Oscar was a favorite for the title, and while Victor Martins mounted a remarkable late-season charge, the Australian had the final say at the last round in Abu Dhabi, securing his first major car racing championship. That title was huge, and it earned him a spot in the Renault Sport Academy. The next logical step was F3, and he landed a seat with a top team, Prema. Now firmly on the F1 radar, Oscar had to continue his momentum, and his teammates at Prema, Frederick Vesti, and, you guessed it, Logan Sargent. The 2020 season was strange due to the global situation, but it went ahead, kicking off in July at the Red Bull Ring. Oscar started his F3 adventure with a win. Immediately, 3 drivers emerged as title contenders: Piastri, Sargent, and Teo Pourchaire. The Australian wasn't always the fastest, but he was the most consistent, constantly banking good points. He won a second time in Barcelona, and the 3 of them gave us a fantastic title battle that went down to the wire at Mugello. Although Sargent drew level with Oscar heading into the final race, the American was taken out in an accident. Piastri played it safe with a 7th place finish, which was enough to secure the crown. He had won the fiercely competitive F3 championship in his rookie season. The F1 world was seriously impressed, and a seat in the pinnacle of motorsport seemed like a short-term goal. Above all, Piastri had that champion's attitude, serene, never panicked, making everything look natural, and F2 would be no different. Now managed by Mark Webber, Oscar stayed with Prema. His junior program was now rebranded as Alpine, and their star prospect was about to make some noise. In the opening round in Bahrain, he won the second race, snatching the lead from Guan Yu Zhao on the final lap. Because you can't just win, you have to do it with style. While he didn't outrageously dominate the season, Piastri always seemed to be the strongest driver on the grid. He took the championship lead at Silverstone and never looked back, winning at Monza, Sochi, and putting on a clinic in Jeddah. Then, at Yas Marina, for the 3rd year in a row, Oscar Piastri won a championship. Just like in F3, he won the F2 title as a rookie. That is incredibly impressive. In the past, only Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton, Nico Hülkenberg, Charles Leclerc, and George Russell had achieved that feat. All of them went on to have great F1 careers. It was a sign of great things to come. Unfortunately, Oscar was left without a race seat in 2022. It was a baffling situation for a driver who had just won 3 titles in 3 different categories. His talent, work ethic, and attitude were praised by everyone in the paddock, but Alpine chose not to promote their gym, preferring to continue with Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso, so he had to wait. That said, he had already driven F1 cars. As part of the Alpine program, he first tested a 2018 Renault in October 2020. He drove again in the 2021 rookie test at Yas Marina. For 2022, he would be the reserve driver for both Alpine and McLaren, thanks to an agreement between the teams. Throughout the year, his management team worked behind the scenes to get him a full-time seat for 2023, because leaving a talent like Piastri on the sidelines makes the whole junior formula system seem pointless. Rumors suggested he might spend a year at Williams before joining Alpine, but Piastri and Webber weren't thrilled with that plan. Quietly, the Australian camp began negotiating with Zach Brown at McLaren. With Daniel Ricciardo struggling, there was a potential opening, and crucially, Oscar's contract with Alpine had a clause stating that if he wasn't confirmed in a race seat by a certain date in July, he was a free agent. Then, in the summer, the driver market exploded. Vettel announced his retirement, and Alonso shocked everyone by announcing his move to Aston Martin for 2023. Alpine immediately announced Oscar Piastri as their driver for the next season, but moments later, that announcement was publicly contradicted by Piastri himself. The Australian stated he did not have a contract with Alpine for 2023 and would not be driving for them. It was chaos. In reality, Alpine had lost Piastri by failing to secure his contract. He was one of the most promising drivers on the market, and other teams were obviously interested. It was a huge mistake by the French team and a brilliant move by McLaren. Naturally, this whole saga didn't sit well with some who claimed it was a betrayal since Alpine had funded his junior career. But let's be clear, drivers often pay to be in these academies. And when you win 3 consecutive titles, 2 of them as a rookie in F3 and F2, and you still don't have a guaranteed race seat, you have every right to look elsewhere. Piastri played his hand and he was absolutely right to do so. Rumor has it that the Alonso camp had even advised the Australian to stay away from Alpine. Alpine took the case to the FIA's contract recognition board, but they didn't have a leg to stand on. The board ruled in favor of McLaren. Piastri would make his F1 debut in 2023 in Papaya Orange. Did Oscar Piastri make the right choice? Looking at McLaren's start to the 2023 season, you could certainly doubt it. The MCL60 was not a good car, and both drivers were stuck at the back of the grid. But even in the midfield chaos, Oscar showed flashes of brilliance, like getting into Q3 in Jeddah while Norris was out in Q1. For his home Grand Prix in Melbourne, the F2 champ got massive support, and despite qualifying 16th, he navigated a chaotic race to finish 8th and score his first points. Team principal Andrea Stella was honest. He admitted the team had messed up, but assured everyone they were working hard to fix it. Meanwhile, Mika Hakkinen made a wild declaration that McLaren would be challenging Red Bull by the end of the season. At the time, it sounded crazy. Oscar scored another point in Monaco, a race where Alpine finished on the podium with Ocon. Again, people asked, did he make the right choice? But on his side, the young Aussie never lost hope. Calm as ever, he focused on learning the craft. He slowly closed the gap to Norris in pure qualifying speed, but he still struggled with race pace and tire management, a science that only comes with experience. But then, in Austria, McLaren brought its first major upgrade package. The MCL60 was completely transformed. At first, only Norris got the new parts, and he immediately jumped forward, qualifying and finishing 4th. With the old car, Piastri was anonymous for one last race, because at the next round in Silverstone, the Australian got the upgrades too, and that changed everything. Did he make the right choice? I think we can say yes. From Silverstone on, Oscar Piastri's season was on a new level. He was no longer just fighting for the top 10. We could now truly appreciate his talent. He qualified 3rd and finished 4th, just seconds away from his first podium. The rest of the season continued that trend. While he was a serious threat in qualifying, race day was tougher. Norris's experience allowed him to stay ahead. But unlike the Brit, Oscar rarely made mistakes. Lando would often have a small error in qualifying that cost him, whereas Piastri seemed calmer and more consistent. It's that natural ease that suggests he's a champion in the making. He earned his first official podium in Japan with a 3rd place finish. And in Qatar, Oscar dominated the Saturday sprint, taking pole and winning ahead of Max Verstappen. It was his first taste of victory in F1, though he was quick to temper expectations, noting it was a sprint, not a Grand Prix. The next day, he drove a superb race in extreme heat, finishing 2nd. It was a massively impressive performance. Unfortunately, his run of good form ended in Austin with a retirement. The end of the season was tougher for McLaren, but Oscar finished his debut year 9th in the standings with 97 points, earning him the Rookie of the Year award. Now, some people called him the best rookie since Hamilton, but I don't fully agree. You can't compare the cars, but relative to their teammates, Piastri was a step behind Norris, while Lewis was on par with a 2-time world champion. But that's okay. For a first season to challenge one of the fastest drivers on the grid and score 2 podiums is an incredible achievement. For 2024, the pressure was on. The rookie excuse was gone. He knew the tracks, he knew the car, and he was expected to do better. At the start of the season, the McLaren was the 3rd or 4th best car, but both drivers scored solid points. In Jeddah, Piastri once again outperformed Norris. But in Australia and Japan, Norris had the upper hand, partly because he received the new upgrades first. But unlike 2023, Piastri was now in a position to truly challenge his teammate. In Miami, his race start was far better than Lando's. He jumped to 2nd and looked like a potential race winner, but then a poorly timed safety car completely flipped the script, handing the advantage to Norris. To make matters worse, Piastri later clashed with Carlos Sainz. Lando took his first victory, and Oscar finished 13th. He had every right to be disappointed, but he remained true to himself. Calm, cold, and almost emotionless, yet somehow not unlikable. It's baffling. While Norris was better at Imola, Piastri reversed the trend in Monaco, qualifying and finishing 2nd, right behind the untouchable Charles Leclerc. It was his 3rd F1 podium. From there, the season got strange for McLaren. The car seemed capable of winning everywhere, but the team squandered one opportunity after another, mostly for Norris. Still, the gap between the two drivers was much smaller than in 2023. Canada, Spain, and Austria were all missed chances. At Silverstone, McLaren again missed out on a potential win, which went to Lewis Hamilton. Piastri had shown he was capable of fighting for victory, but had to settle for 4th. With 6 different winners in 2024, it felt like Piastri should logically be the 7th. He just needed to take that final step. The stage was set for Hungary, a twisty circuit that suited the McLaren perfectly. After 4 fumbled races, the Papaya team had to deliver. They locked out the front row, Norris on pole ahead of Piastri, but at the start, Norris was hesitant, losing places while the Australian seized the lead. Was this Piastri's day? Based on his first stint, it certainly looked like it. Oscar was impressive, pulling away from the field, but McLaren, wary of the competition, prioritized Norris in the pit stop sequence. Normally, the lead driver gets priority, but they gave Norris the undercut. The decision reversed their positions on track. The pit wall desperately tried to fix their mistake, asking Lando to swap positions, but by then, Norris was clearly faster, which made the team order debatable, even ridiculous, especially since Lando was ahead in the championship. The radio exchanges became more and more awkward. The gap grew to over 5 seconds. Oscar didn't have the pace to catch up, yet in the final laps, Lando finally gave in, slowing on the main straight to let Piastri through for the win. It spoiled a magnificent 1-2 finish, and at the end of 70 laps, Oscar Piastri won his first Grand Prix, becoming the 115th winner in F1 history. Unfortunately, the victory left a bitter taste. It wasn't the most glorious first win, and there was no massive celebration, but that's likely more due to Oscar's personality than the circumstances. Unfortunately, the victory left a bitter taste. It wasn't the glorious, hard-fought first win a driver dreams of, which is probably why we didn't see a massive celebration. But knowing Oscar's unshakably calm personality, he likely isn't dwelling on the circumstances. He's already thinking about the next one. While he still needs to polish a few details to join the absolute elite of the sport, he is incredibly close. His entire career has been on a steep upward trajectory. After Jack Brabham, Alan Jones, Mark Webber, and Daniel Ricciardo, Australia has its 5th Formula One winner, and he may just be the most promising yet. This win in Hungary, no matter how it happened, certainly won't be his last. So, what do you all think? Is this victory the catalyst that will unleash a future champion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Oscar Piastri's career, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.